recite the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay. What's up? Lady. Yeah, better. So last week we spent some time going over, this basic idea that we don't have to be sitting here to be practicing Dharma. That we don't have to, we can, be doing all the usual tasks of mundane life, daily life, householder life, whatever. But as long as we set or generate a bodhicitta motivation or a positive motivation to benefit others through our activities or benefit our minds or whatever it is, that becomes, makes that everything we do can become a Dharma practice. Why does that matter? Any thoughts on that?
More is better.
Okay.
Well, you could either be doing Dharma practice or the opposite. You could either be creating good karma, positive karma or negative karma.
But also, it's a difference between doing positive karma and positive karma with a long-term view. You do it with a Dharma motivation. It has the idea of, good rebirths, possibly future enlightenment. It has a big view. It's not just for, let me have some merit so that I'll have good things in the future. It's much more about, let me create some merit so I create the cause to be a benefit in the future, to give me the resources I need to be a benefit in the future, to be, all those kinds of things. So that there's a real important addition, that making a motivation that is in accord with the Dharma. I don't mean Buddhism, but just in accord with this idea of actions that lead us out of suffering, that and those actions that lead us out of suffering are things that increase our wisdom and things that benefit others, that have that those two motivations, that we, so you might be doing something to remove obstacles to developing your wisdom, and be doing something just to be part of the community of living beings because we're so interdependent. So everything we do impacts others. So it's, if you add a Dharma motivation for it, you're kind of remembering that, oh, I'm not just doing this, because I get paid for it. Yeah.
I don't know if you're, and I missed this.
Okay.
No, I'm not apologizing. I'm saying I missed coming here because I had extra work hours. But the way the thought I've heard about that is that when you do good things because you want better karma, just doing something good actually creates karma in itself. If you just follow the dharmic life, you're just putting one foot in front of the other and allowing the universe, allowing the Buddha to guide you.
Okay. Setting a motivation is an important part of that,
Well,
of doing good karmic actions.
I guess um, motivation that's not about you're doing it because you think just because you think it'll benefit yourself.
In fact, that's not dharma.
Right.
So thinking it's
Yeah,
always about benefiting others. I want to do this to benefit others, you know. So um it has this is the great irony, is that the more we cherish others, the more we benefit. It's just because that's the path to happiness. So, it's like you can't go wrong with learning how to cherish others. The idea of that, the biggest beneficiary of bodhicitta is you, because that's changing your mind towards eliminating the self-grasping, self-centered mind, trying to develop wisdom and compassion, and really keeping in mind all the time that we're not this one unit, independent, kind of, we're so interdependent we can't even imagine it. So because we can't imagine at this stage of our development how many causes and conditions come together for every moment. It's like immense, and it's just like only a Buddha can see them all, but it's just like, it's countless lifetimes, who knows what seeds ripening in this. But I mean, it's literally, when you try to think of just one action, like a crop in the fields, and you think about the history of that occurring, that someone had to come up with an idea like crops didn't just come. Someone kind of thought, oh, we could take these seeds and actually plant them in an orderly fashion and figure out how to harvest them and what they need and blah, blah, blah. And then we can actually, we have a crop, and then, at one time I was flying over somewhere, and I looked out the window, and there was in the middle of nowhere, this, all this green field. And then there's these little trees, and I thought someone's planted trees for their grandchildren to have a shaded drive up to the house. It wasn't something that the people who planted them were going to see, because the trees would take too long to grow. So those kinds of things are layered, effects of an unbelievable number of conditions and previous causes for that to be what's happening now. And it's so that interdependence, it's just amazing. And if you take in the view that basically, the Buddha taught that karma is the law of cause and effect. Karma itself just means action. But the law of cause and effect is, what those actions are creating the cause for, also what those actions are the effect of. It's just like, so it's just this, continuous series of moments of cause and effect. So I was going somewhere.
Just one thing I heard in what you're saying is that when you talk about the history behind things, it's like we look at, even if we're really following the dharmic life, we look at each thing we do sometimes sort of as just what's happening in the moment, and it is, but at the same time,
It's an effect.
we're not just there with these circumstances.
Yeah. It's very easy to see it as luck.
Yeah.
Random, bad luck, good luck. I mean, but it's actually not. It's just one of, it's an effect of many causes and conditions. It's kind of unfathomable. Now, according to the Buddha, positive things that we enjoy, positive effects, even though they're in samsara, are the result of our positive actions in the past. So that means everything we enjoy, every beautiful thing, is the effect of good karma. So when you look at things like sunsets, and you think about all the beings that look at a sunset and enjoy it, all those beings created the cause for that collectively. So it's like your ability to see this is not the result of your actions alone. The fact that it exists at all is the result of all this positive stuff. So, we have positive things in our experience and we have negative things in our experience. Nature gives us these beautiful things. It's also a hell realm for everything else. It's like the best concentration camp ever. It's a slaughterhouse. But but we also, we enjoy butterflies and, beautiful colors and, all sorts of stuff. All of that pleasant experiences, are not in the flowers or the butterflies or in that. It's the effect of our positive actions in the past that we have things that we find enjoyable. But the fact that there are many of us that have that experience with the same object is because we've created a world that has beauty as well as ugliness. It's a manifestation of our karma. So it matters what we do, and it doesn't just matter what we do, for ourselves, but for all of us in it together, which is a lot. Yeah.
And the origination is underlying, whether it's good karma or bad karma,
It's all dependent around everything that's a product.
Internal phenomena are its cause and effect conditions. It's dependent origination, which
Dependent arising, yeah.
dependent arising, which understanding that helps you start to eliminate.
But that's what cause and effect is. I mean, it's the proof, so to speak, that we're not independent, self-sufficient, inherently existent, and nothing is. Everything's a dependent arising. Not everything's a product, but everything's a dependent arising. Yeah.
So what arises for me when I contemplate that, because I'm not in that every moment, is awe.
Yeah, me too.
So I don't know that I've ever heard awe used in any of the Dharma talks.
Well, I mean, to me, awe is that, to me, there's nothing more awe-inspiring than Buddha nature. The fact that at any given moment, we can be 100% certain positive actions are happening. And it's because it's the manifestation of Buddha nature. That we all, at our very nature, have positive qualities. It's not, and this is our capacity to perfect it. That if we didn't have these good qualities as a basis, we couldn't just develop them out of nothing. It is their basis for being able to become a Buddha. It's like, so all the beauty, all the thing, this is all a manifestation of Buddha nature. And we can distort that into a certain kind of pride about it or something. But to me, it's like you said, the more appropriate response is awe. So it's this, the potential of the mind is like indescribable.
So what is the difference between emptiness and dependent arising?
They're the opposites of the.
Sorry, what was the question?
The difference between emptiness and dependent.
What's the definition of emptiness?
Emptiness is that things don't have intrinsic existence.
So it's an absence of something,
An absence.
of intrinsic nature. What is dependent arising? It's the law of cause and effect. Things, could things be causes and effects if they inherently existed? They wouldn't change. They wouldn't do anything.
Exist, they don't need anything to cause it.
Right, right, because they're inherently like that.
Emptiness is a characteristic.
And so is
of
dependent
everything.
arising. So you know, it's like two sides of a coin.
Right.
They're not the same thing. They're distinct. In fact, one's an absence. So it's certainly, the absence is not equivalent to production. Production, though, couldn't exist without that absence.
And arising like conventional. Okay.
Conventional.
Yeah, and emptiness is the ultimate truth.
Characteristic of conventional. That's what makes the ultimate realizing that.
Well, everything has an ultimate truth and a conventional truth.
Right.
They're not, you know, they're both qualities of existence. Now, form matter, when it disintegrates, the emptiness of that form disintegrates. You know, emptiness is not something that's out there. Emptiness is an absence of something. So this cup does not have inherent existence. This body does not have inherent existence. So when this body dies, the emptiness of this body ceases. Because there's no body to have emptiness of.
There's no conditional reality to the empty.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
It gives me a chuckle because it sounds like nothing can be half empty.
Yes. I think that is true. So, okay, so going to, you know, the chapter on reality in the book. It's a good chapter to go slowly through and meditate on, you know, because it's going through the logic of the absence of inherent existence and the relationship between dependent arising, because basically the king of reasons for emptiness is dependent arising. I mean, that's, you know, so they, you know, it's, since things are dependent arising, they must be empty, because emptiness has a very specific meaning. And nothing could be dependent arising or dependently arisen or dependent origination, you know, if things weren't empty of inherent existence. Everything exists because inherent existence doesn't exist. Yep. Any questions? I'm trying to read that expression. Yeah, really, I can relate. We don't run out of time. Trouble is, we can keep getting stuck and stuck some more. So we definitely want to be. So it's like, you know, Tsongkhapa says, one who can see the cause and result of all existence within samsara and liberation as unbetraying. That's that part about karma. Karma is definite. It's congruent. It doesn't go to waste. You know, it's, you know, it's like you can count on karma, even if you don't want to. And whose false view is dissolved has entered the path that pleases the Buddhas. So the wisdom of emptiness should be a direct remedy for our ignorance of the true nature of reality. It even says, let me find it. so it goes through, like, what exactly is this I that I'm always talking about? And we have great difficulty in formulating an answer. These are very important sentences. This is exactly how we explore and investigate our self-grasping, because what the Buddha is saying is the thing we're grasping onto never existed at all, yet we still exist. It is the way we exist that we're not understanding. We believe the fictional story we've made up about a self that has inherent existence. There's a nature that is me, Don't you know me? That's what we tell our partners. How can you not understand? We've been together forever, blah, blah, blah. That's a made up fictional character. It doesn't exist. We don't exist like that. We couldn't exist like that. So we never want to lose sight of the fact that the Buddha is not saying that we don't have a conventional existence. There isn't a I. It's not saying that. It's saying that the I that we hold to exist is a story we've made up. It's a superimposition on top of what actually exists. We weave together all our moments of body and mind into some sort of storyline, even though we have huge gaps in our ability to remember this and that, I loved it when my dad was getting towards the end of his life and Alzheimer's had sort of started. He was doing all this genealogy, right? And so when he completed the genealogy, or it felt like he'd gotten as far as he was going to be able to go, which he was absolutely correct on, he gave us each a binder with it. So but he put a little thing about each of us in the front, like his children, Everything he said about me was wrong. None of it was right, because he no longer could really put those pieces together, and as, and like he would say things, they were just in conversation, you realize he has no recollection of me at a certain age, none, and I don't even think that had to do with Alzheimer's. I think it just was, we create these stories and we buy into them. It's obvious that the I cannot exist separately from the body and mind, because there is no I we can point to without also pointing to some aspect of our mental or physical makeup, the body or the mind. But we know they're inextricably, part of the me, the conventional I, which is why we say things. And it makes sense to say things like I'm sitting, I'm sleeping, I'm walking, I'm thinking, I'm, eating. When it's the body that's eating. But, we're a body and mind. The mind makes the decision to eat, in theory, unless there are cookies on the plate. They say men eat out of proximity to food. Women will go get it. But anyway. So this whole chapter really kind of leads you through your basic meditation on the I that you're grasping at. And we could actually have a realization of emptiness based on this if we meditated on it long enough, reflected on it long enough, made sure we understood what it was saying, all that kind of stuff. Despite what we instinctively believe about our false I, our conventionally real I is neither separate from our body and mind, nor is it one with any part of them. It exists independent on them both, the body and the mind. So we need to understand that these little details are really important in trying to kind of sit with them and go, what's being said here? And why am I not getting it? Because intellectually, none of these words are hard. You know, it's understanding the import of them. What does it mean to say you can't point to an eye? You think about that into relationship to when you react to something, when someone says something you don't like about you, particularly. And you go, I'm not like that. Oh, really? There's no eye you can point to there? You really are holding an eye that you should be able to point to. You can't because there's no eye like that that exists. So these things have a deep meaning that we, that we can't just hear the words and just kind of go, yeah, I get that, I get that, I get that. No, you need to understand the consequence of what that says. It's like the consequence of understanding this idea that karma is unbetrayed, that it's definite, that it's congruent, that it doesn't go to waste. So what are the consequences of things like that? What's the consequence of karma being definite? What does that mean even?
What's going to happen?
Right, so we're talking about the law of cause and effect here.
Everything you do with the right conditions,
Places a karmic seed in our mind stream
the karmic seed will ripen when the conditions
are met. Okay.
And that doesn't.
What else about it? Yes, that's correct. So what about it being congruent?
Pretty similar. Similar, the cause and the effect are related.
In what way?
Like,
It's a very simple.
yeah, no, I mean, killing and being killed, that kind of thing.
Bad equals bad, good equals good. A negative action is not going to give you a positive result. Karma is definite that way. Yeah.
But intention can alter the severity or effect of an action.
Yeah. So does that mean the action doesn't cause an effect?
Negative action based on the intention may not cause.
Yeah, we have to be very, very cautious, because if we don't have wisdom, our ability to discern whether our motivation is strong enough to outweigh the negative action we're about to do is really limited. That doesn't mean sometimes we don't have to make a choice. Say you went out into the street to keep a child from getting hit by a car. Now, your action may also cause a wreck, all this kind of stuff, and, you don't want to hesitate running in to save that child just because you might also be the cause of a wreck, So it's like, because we're not Buddhas yet, so we have to do the best we can. But we don't want to kid ourselves to think that, oh, I'm doing this for a Dharma purpose, so it's going to have a good result. Yeah, well, check up and check up again and check up again and make sure there's no you anywhere in that story. Because when you really look, the I has a nasty way of popping up. Oh, yeah, I want that. I wanted that outcome. It mattered to me that happened rather than this happening. I can say it was for the good of all people, but the truth is, it's my opinion and it's what I wanted. Yeah, but you don't see that. Your mind's going, oh no, I'm doing this for, nothing but good purposes.
My name on the building.
But that's obvious. Most of our stuff isn't obvious. You have to really look. And anytime you feel that gut kind of tug where somehow it's not just a mere conversation about something, you really want to protect. You really want that other person to be headed this way and they're headed that way. And so and you've got this little tug, you want to look at that because your self-interest is there. You want to go, why is this important to me? What is it? Because usually you'll find some self-grasping I think. And that's what we have to uproot. So that when we do want to do this or that, our motivations are clean. And it's hard. It's really hard work because we kid ourselves all the time. We rationalize things all the time, So really being able, and we're not going to get it right for quite a long time until we actually have wisdom, But in the meantime, we want to just keep checking up so we can find that I. And anytime there's any little slight discomfort, that usually means you want a particular thing to happen, And that's a clue that there's self-interest there. There's something in it about you, your desires, your wants, your needs, your whatever, your opinion. So we have to be careful to be able to discern that. Yeah.
So let me do an action.
Mhm.
I think I'm doing it for somebody. And I have to twinge and realize that there's underlying self-interest.
Mhm.
Okay, so now I have the awareness. Then I still go ahead and do the action. Now,
Depends.
with the awareness,
It depends whether you would do the action or not. Because the awareness allows you to choose. Like if it's something you realize, well, I'm really just trying to get, I mean, it can be ridiculous. I'm just trying to get this person to want to go to the same movie I want to go to, And so then, when you realize that that's what's that twinge is, you can let it go and let the other person perhaps choose what they want and not try to get it to go the way you want it. So you can choose. That self-awareness allows you. Now, doesn't mean like if you go, it's still a good action. That's the twinge is there. You recognize that. You still think it's a good action, a good, something one that you want to do, and it's a positive action. You just know it's tainted a little bit with your self-interest. You still do it, and you try to work on removing that self-interest. Yes. So it can, because it happens in all kinds of situations where you really are trying to manipulate some situation to get something you want. And that actually is contaminating the action to where it's not even a good action anymore, And other times it's just, it helps you be aware, oh, there's my self-grasping mind. It's very hard to do things without that because we have ignorance and it is influencing us all the time. And that ignorance is just that self-grasping. We don't understand. Yeah.
I think that it's one of the things that it's kind of paradoxical that sometimes can keep me or has kept me from taking dharmic action. Because I see that taking that dharmic action may result in a positive for me.
Yeah.
Then it's like, well,
You're shortchanging yourself.
I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to conclude that it's not dharmic because it may result in positive.
All dharmic actions result in a positive thing for you. You can't stop that.
But sometimes, like doing the right thing or taking a dharmic action, that it may lead to something you're not going to like. I mean, in terms of a more immediate consequence.
Yeah, like, oh, I have to do what? How many prostrations?
35.
It's like, it's not like we like all the actions that accumulate merit. We want to learn to like them. We want to learn that our resistance to like them is, attachment to sensual pleasure rather than sensual discomfort.
What about a situation where, like, you get somebody doesn't realize something, or they don't get something. And you just get that you're like the one that needs to tell them about it.
Oh, well, yeah, that's not arrogant at all.
No, I meant,
I'm sorry. When we think we can change someone else's mind, or that we know what will be wisdom for them, we're on a kind of dangerous path. Okay.
so they're, I don't want to get into too much of a rabbit hole here, but if there's somebody that's going to like make a choice based on lack of
Are
information.
they a Dharma student?
You're saying in most cases, it's better just keep your mouth shut.
If it's unasked for advice, it's usually better to keep your mouth shut. Even teachers don't want to do it. Teachers teach if you're asked to teach, not because you think, boy, they could use some teaching.
What about the two-line phrase, which I heard somewhere from some Dharma teacher?
Right.
That the two questions you ask yourself are, is it kind? Is it useful?
Yeah, but that's like a nice little, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good place to start. Because that can keep us from doing things that are totally unnecessary and aren't kind.
That will eliminate a lot.
Of these of mental, and I mean, well, mostly eliminates a lot of negative speech. So it's but I mean, again, that's a very useful guideline. It's sort of like waking up in the morning and say, at least today I'm not going to do any harm. That's a vast statement, though. So you have to, in every situation, you kind of have to go like things like, is it useful? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it, all that kind of stuff? Am I just showing off my knowledge? Am I just, putting my opinion out there? Just numerous ways. And we need slogans like that to kind of just help us get through the day in a skillful way. But I don't think that's sufficient for everything. That's just a good start, particularly with speech. Because sometimes it can be useful and it can be kind and be unwanted. We have to be careful about that because we're putting our opinion in there that I've decided this is useful for you. Well, they haven't asked you anything yet. They asked for your advice. Maybe, I mean, in close relationships, of course, we can, but you have to know the relationship. But when we start to act like everybody's teacher, as opposed to everybody's student, we're kind of in trouble until we have a lot more wisdom. I mean, parents know this. Parents have to, intervene. That's part of their job as being a responsible parent up to a point, like when their kids are now adults. And then they're meddling. So, but if you ask your parents for advice as an adult, it's fair game. But but parents have to recognize, they kind of have to take into account, okay, for this child, they need some, I need to help them in this way. This child, I better stay out of the way because if I bring this up, they're going to rebel. So we have to, it's all in context, right? So it depends. And we want to be trying to figure that out because we want to benefit others, not just throw our point of view out, because we think we're right. Because it just has no point except to elevate yourself. That makes sense. So, so we really want to think before we do things like that. And we may want to sit on it for a few days before we, I've shared this before. At Thich Nhat Hanh's, one of the rules of community rules was that if you got irritated with someone, you had to tell them within 24 hours. But you couldn't talk about it until you were no longer irritated or angry or whatever level. you know. And usually by the time that had subsided, you realize, oh, it had nothing to do with the person. And you could very easily go up, oh, it was all my own stuff, and move on. If you couldn't, if it turned, and you couldn't, and then so you go talk to them about it, but you're no longer angry, and you try to, better communicate with each other. These are people who are living in community, right? And if you couldn't come up with something that was helpful, or it still was causing tension, you had to bring it to a larger a larger group. And then eventually you just brought it to the whole Sangha if you couldn't solve it, because these are monks and nuns, So, it's we want to be we do want to improve our communication skills with each other. When we're in relationship, there's oftentimes where it's important to talk about things that are, kind of difficult, and it's difficult to know our own motivation sometimes. And we have to be really careful and gentle and kind and, all those things, and mindful of the other person. And then sometimes we have to get direction from someone else. That's, like therapists and stuff. So, um, because we are interdependent. We have, there's all sorts of stuff going on that we're not even aware of. So, wisdom is hard. I mean, it really, it takes so much. Context is everything. Your real deep knowledge of other people, whether you really have that with so-and-so, because we can hurt each other very easily with our speech and with our actions, especially those where we're trying to fix something. We can be really unskillful with that. So, but it doesn't mean we don't have conversations. We don't, we're not aware, but we want to always come from our own side. This is upsetting to me. It's my stuff. Can you help me with that? So. The positive aspect of emptiness, besides the fact that once you realize that you actually, this wisdom that removes all the foundation for our disturbing emotions, but is that it's a reminder, even long before we realize, didn't directly, have an experience of it, so that it really, makes all of our foundation of self-grasping collapse. So there's nothing to grasp. Is that understanding that nothing's fixed, nothing is permanent, everything is changes, causes and conditions come together, everything is shifting all the time. We shift, we change, everybody else around us changes. So things are transitory. Sometimes we make them transitory sooner, we leave a relationship, or, we quit a job, but we're not stuck with anything for very long, because it will change. And that means the good stuff too. It will change.
Memories.
Yeah. So remembering that things are empty is sort of freeing, because usually when we're stuck, we're grasping at something. They meant this, they really think that da 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 da, we're grasping at some idea, and nobody exists like that. And we hold our own views. What do you mean you disagree with me? It's like, this is something I hold very dear. And you're telling me you don't think it's right? We can just be blown away by, this notion, that on the simple matter, it's like when you find out somebody else doesn't like chocolate, and I'm going, really? How is that possible? But I mean, have some big stuff too. And you kind of go, you really think that that's a good idea? It's just, we're just, you know. But if you just realize that what we're holding to never existed in the first place, there's nothing solid and concrete like that. We could make it be destructive by grasping after things and hold, oh, it's got to be this way, you know. But being able to just let it go. That's why I said sometimes when you notice that twinge, you realize, oh, this is silly. I don't need to hold on to this, you know, and just let, you know, you kind of take yourself out of the thing. And that's very freeing too. And it's kind of amusing, you know, when you see so clearly, oh, there I am. I'm in the way here. Let's move me out of the way.
Got it moment. Got it moment.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. You know, so there are more and more of those as you practice, you know, and you just notice. Becoming self-aware can seem sometimes, you know, like, whoa. The truth is we can't do anything unless we know what we're doing. You know, we need to know where we're coming from. We need to know what's in our mind. That's where all our power lies. You know, and there really is a pause between, you know, that thought and some action. And we can take advantage of that pause. We can make it longer. We can change direction. You know.
Sometimes the irritation rises immediately.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying there's necessarily a pause before the irritation arises, because that's habituated. So we have lots of practice of not following that mind. It arises and we go, yeah, that's useless, you know, and it arises again. Oh, yeah, that's useless. And we just keep ignoring it, keep ignoring it. Eventually, you know, like 3 years from now, you don't have them as often, you know. But so it's not that we're at the place of being able to stop them before the fact. The critical piece now is to notice it's arisen and go, I have a choice to follow it or not. You know?
Unless you follow this path.
Yeah, well, it has no power. So it kind of fades away. Yep.
So, very simple practice of being aware of, let's say I'm making dinner. Or something, and somewhere there's a twinge for whatever reason that I'm getting brownie points, or rather than just the pure act of making the dinner for someone. So I think for myself, at that moment, I could fall into self-blame, some kind of negative thing. Whereas at that moment, probably you need then self-compassion.
Self-compassion, you can also say, well, oh, I don't want to go down that. You know, I'm enjoying this process. And if I get caught up in pride or in some particular, you know, like outcome for this meal or, you know, whatever, like, you know, anything, like it's going to work out. That can just contaminate the whole scenario, you know, so there's no need to go down that path. And so if it arises of some sort of like, especially self-criticism, yes, compassion's always a good response, because we, you know, it's just that acknowledgement, oh, there's some disturbing emotion that's causing me suffering. You know, there's no reason for me to judge this moment, this, you know, this meal, you know, this whatever, or this mistake. You know, like we do something, you know, we go, oh, I forgot this part in the recipe, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, okay. You know, so if our mind kind of goes to, oh, I'm such an idiot, or this won't come out, or blah, 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 none of that's necessary. But if it's arisen, we just can go to compassion. Everybody makes mistakes, and so many people respond that way, isn't it? And this is how we suffered, you know, and it's totally unnecessary. It's not kind or useful.
And maybe because I cook and that's such a potent image, you know, and how often it has to get yourself. I mean, and if you do come up with compassion, self-compassion for when you see criticizing or the pride of the making it or any kind of yucky emotion.
They can kind of grasp it. Yeah.
So after the compassion, I think can come humor.
Yes. I think that's the best. I mean, to me, that's one of the things that most often comes up because it's kind of funny. We're taking this little bitty action and making it into a very big deal. I mean, how many meals have you cooked? How many dishes have you prepared? This can't possibly be a really big deal. You know, it's just, but we really make a story, and that story hurts us. It's not useful. And when we see other people doing it themselves, we can even see it. When somebody starts criticizing, oh, I didn't do it as well as this didn't come out like it usually does. And they're, blah, blah, blah. When you can see the suffering in someone else, we need to remember that when we're doing it to ourselves, that it's not a good look on anybody and nobody needs it. It's totally unnecessary.
So wise friends, often, I can't think of a specific, but if you're into something and you verbalize it, and the kind friend says, oh, this too will pass. This is nothing.
Let it go. Yeah.
Brush it off your shoulder.
Yeah.
That is a wonderful completion of that whole yucky feeling, acting out of whatever, and this kind friend coming in.
Yeah. And you can create that
who
kind
gives you
friend.
compassion, actually.
Yeah. And that's where some people need to use if I was talking to my best friend, what would I say? So that, because we usually won't talk to our best friend the same way we'll talk to ourselves. So we need to create that wise friend and listen to that voice, because that's you. And we're totally capable of that because we do it all the time with others. So we want to recognize that we're also deserving of compassion and cut some space, for ourselves. And so we have to, and all these things are dependent on understanding dependent arising. That our attitude becomes a cause, first of all, of repeating that same attitude, also of distracting us from what we're doing, so more mistakes might happen, that we're creating a condition to where we won't even enjoy the meal no matter how well it comes out. We won't even notice, just everything. It can just blow it all. And what's the point of that? That's how we add suffering for our own selves, our mental suffering on top of something, like making a mistake. I mean, we're already suffering because we made a mistake, but it's not enough to hold on to. But we grasp after it, make it so much worse. But this is why some people, really benefit from saying mantras while they're doing certain tasks, so it just helps them lighten up. It helps them direct their mind towards things that are more important, like, let me take care of my mind. I have to do this chore, but I'm going to take care of my mind at the same time. Instead of listening to my own mindless conversation, I'm going to listen to, powerful words. Somehow we get distracted from reading the chapter about reality. I don't know how that happens.
Why isn't that what we're still talking? And then arising and all?
Yeah, but we're not talking about the realization of emptiness. So I encourage all of you to go through this chapter paragraph by paragraph, if necessary, sentence by sentence, and give some thought to it. And if something comes up that you kind of, that makes no sense to me, write it down. You might find a week later it makes sense to you, but slow, or you bring it to class. But it's amazing to really think about how, in some ways you could look at the absence of inherent existence as the potential of all things. There'd be no potential without it, because we'd be inherently existent. We'd be stuck where we are. So it's really, since there's no inherent disease, it's all potential. And it helps us to be able to notice those moments out in the world in our day when we're really grasping at an eye. Because most of the time it's kind of neutral, we're not thinking, we're not that clear. But when we have self-interest in something, or we're not getting our way, or things, or we get scared, that I comes to the forefront. And we want to notice it. And we want to see, in what way am I making this independent thing that has to be protected or has to be elevated in their reputation, we want to get a real feel for it, because we have to refute that I, because that I doesn't exist. And if we don't have a really clear idea of it, we can't refute it. We'll just, we'll just be trying to refute a story we haven't gotten familiar with. It's because you want to get to the point where when that I arises, you can go, I'm really grasping at an idea of me that's being somehow either attacked or, something, whatever is brought up the I for you. It's sort of like, oh, my reaction of fear is going to really keep me from dying. Guess what? It doesn't work like that. Fear is useful, like it might make you a better driver, safer driver, but it still cannot protect you from death. Am I making sense, or have I gone off the deep end? So we want to look at that. Oh, so there's really no point in grasping after, being indignant. You ever get indignant when you're on the road and kind of like, who are these idiots? They could hurt me. It's, it's laughable, because we are not safe from death. We are going to die, and we don't have any control over how or when. And worrying about that, as if, oh, I've got to control everybody around me because, hey, I don't want them to hurt me. Like when you don't do things because you're so afraid it's going to, you'll embarrass yourself, and so your reputation's going to go down the hole or something. Well, do we really have control over how people think of us? No. What's our reputation mostly depend upon? Yes, our past actions. It's no result. And it may have nothing to do with this life. You know how some people work very hard and they're smart, they work, and nothing works out for them? It's karma. It's a past life thing ripening. It isn't that they're not working hard enough, it's not that they haven't earned it or deserved it. It's just not going to work out.
Yeah, so you're the person, let's say,
Mhm.
and you work very hard, you're diligent, you try to be careful about things, and you put your nose to the grindstone, and nothing does work out, and you realize, oh, this must be, where do you go from there?
Keep doing that good hard work, because it will ripen in the future as something positive. It just won't be this life. It might not be this.
That's also letting go too, right?
Yeah, it's totally letting go because outcomes do not matter in terms of your current action. I know this is that big view. It's sort of like, yeah, having an affair can be fun in the immediate sensual pleasure kind of thing, but it's a negative action and it's going to hurt you in the future because that pleasure you're experiencing has nothing to do with the adultery you're committing. It has to do with prior past actions that are arriving as pleasure. Nothing to do with that action other than the fact that we're sensory beings, you know. It's just, this is what's hard about karma. It's not instant, you know. It's not like it's magic either. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have the pleasure of adultery if you don't commit adultery. You know, it's not like all of a sudden you just have sexual pleasure because, hey, nothing's happening, but yeah, I like that. There is some, you know, there's a condition for that. You have to be having sex, you know. So it's this, they're not removed in, it's not like it's entirely removed from what you're doing, but results are something that's been put in motion by many causes and conditions. You know. So, you know, you know, they just say, you know, if you want to know what your past lives were like, look at your conditions now. And if you want to know what your future lives are like, will be like, look at your mind. So you keep working hard. This is the right thing to do. You know, you want to work hard. It matters to you how you do your job. You know. You know, like people who take pride in how they get stuff out of the recycle landfill pile to sell for in India, for an off the wall example. You know, people take great care in all kinds of work we wouldn't ever consider doing in this life. Anybody read, what's it called? I'm not going to remember it. There's a book that was written by a journalist a few years ago, maybe probably 10, 15 years ago now. Time flies. Bernice Wu, I think is the author's name. But she follows a kid and his little family in a slum in India. And it's very interesting it's because it's a world that is so far removed from our experience. And it's just kind of interesting. She's not a Buddhist, Bernice Wu. It's just a book. A friend of mine who's a nun, it's her sister's book. But it's, you know, so it's,
So, there's been exponential growth in population.
yep.
So every soul will not.
No, let's not use that.
Being?
Yeah.
Human being.
No, being, because people, just because they're people in this life doesn't mean they were humans in the previous life.
Got it. Okay, that takes care of my question.
Okay. To be born human, you have to have been practicing ethics in a previous life. And, you know, for that, it has a karmic seed ripens that has ethics in it. You have you know, it's a virtuous seed that ripens that causes a human rebirth. And then it has to be especially virtuous if you have good conditions. Because a lot of people have terrible human rebirths. Yeah. So. But it's really this thing, if we can try to learn how to pay attention to what's going on in our mind, make decisions based on whether we think what's going on in our mind is something worth following or not following, you know, realizing we can correct our course of action if we're self-aware enough to see where we're headed and go, oh, that's not very skillful, and either just stop or stop and do something differently. You know, it just depends on what your opportunities are. But it's this, and if we try to wake up in the mornings and try to set a good motivation for the day, of remembering that, I want to be helpful to others, and that helps not just the people around me, but that ripples out to help the people around them. Because if we're a good condition for our own behavior, that we might be a good condition for someone else's as well. I mean, it's just, just helpful in general. We try not to harm. If we try, all of these things, if we do that from moment to moment to moment, our life takes care of itself, and our future rebirths are going to be good, because we'll have developed a habit of mind that even at the moment of death is going to think about others and not grasp after this life, with a self-interested motive. It'll be easier to let go, but mostly with a peaceful mind. With just it's like, oh, let me put this in perspective in relation to others, and it's not a bad idea to always kind of go, and may I be reborn and have a good, happy rebirth, because I need another one in order to continue to develop my mind in order to benefit others. So right now we're habituated to things like irritation, impatience, our reputation. I mean, all sorts of things, but we also have good qualities, and we just want to practice those more often, develop those, make those the first. So compassion is the first mind that arises when something goes wrong, whether we don't like what someone says to us or whatever, is to have compassion for ourselves and the other person. To have compassion almost in every moment, that's a good response. If we're suffering, it's a good response. If someone else is suffering, it's a good response. Kindness is a good response. Generosity is a good response. Wisdom, which might mean not responding. Yeah.
Can I make a self-revelatory?
If you care to share.
So lately I've been looking at myself and the quality of patience and impatience.
My favorite disturbing emotion.
So I've been looking at my actions in the light of whether I am being or not being.
Yep.
And when it becomes patently clear to me that I'm being impatient, that impatience arises in me, not suffer fools kindly or
whatever the reason, the excuse.
Yeah. And I catch it. The thing that then it turns to that person is compassion.
Yeah, that's exactly the habit you're going for.
And it feels so
much better.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
It
Well,
feels like liberation.
Well, what it is how you've just ended a moment of suffering. This is how we can reduce our suffering in this very life. We don't have to wait for karma to ripen. We can, by working with our minds and developing minds that are skillful, both for ourselves and others, we suffer less right away. It's just the way it is. Happiness arises from good qualities, from good states of mind, positive states of mind. It doesn't mean there isn't hard work involved. It just means that suffering moment ceases. Eventually it won't come up. Because your first response will be compassion. You won't get impatient. I don't know what that feels like, but that's how it works. We keep training ourselves. I mean, I say that, but of course there are situations that I used to would have been just livid about that I'm not at all anymore. So it's just, but it's a process depending on how habituated we are. I'm particularly habituated to anger. And now it's mostly, I'm really still habituated to impatience because that's what led to anger. Now I've caught it, it's smaller now, and now, and mostly, and humor is my first response often, because the thing that I find so hilarious about impatience is that who do I think I am? I mean, really? The world's supposed to cater to me in my time? So ridiculous. Yeah, it's embarrassingly ridiculous. So, you know,
Funny saying, either make me patient, more patient, and do it now.
and yeah, exactly. Yep. I used to, when I first learned about patience, I used to think, well, if I had patience, it's the antidote to anger. And it wouldn't be a problem, but I don't have. So why are you telling me patience? Because I don't, that's not working. I don't know how to do that. So of course, we don't know how to use the antidotes. We have to learn how to use the antidotes. We have to develop the antidotes, but we all have it into different degrees. Even very impatient people have circumstances that they're patient in. It might be with small children. It might be with students or something, they just have patience. But it's, because we all have the basis for good qualities. We're not bereft of that, You can go, mental illness can arise in a life, and it can reflect such a strong habituation to certain things that it's like, it's chronic, So you're a narcissist, or you've got depression all the time. So it's this, so it's entire, so you may not look like you have qualities that could overcome that. And maybe in this life you don't, those, you don't have access to them in the same way. But, it doesn't mean you don't have them. It just means you just don't have the conditions in this life. It's just like, like addicts, if they hadn't met the substance they're addicted to, they'd never discover that. They live somewhere where there wasn't any whatever. Not that that exists on this planet, but anyway. So it's not just, you have to, we don't just have to have the predisposition, we have to have the condition. Both have to be there.
And that's karmic.
Yep, that's cool. And it changes from life to life. We're a mixed bag, obviously, by all the things that ripen.
So, a reporter once asked the Dalai Lama, "So you don't get angry?" To which he responded, "Yes, I do. It's just that it passes." So now we're in the area of equanimity and equanimity practices.
Yep.
I think there's a question somewhere in there.
Okay. Well, equanimity helps us understand. There are many types, but one way equanimity helps us is understanding that every moment is not going to be pleasant.
Is what?
Not going to be pleasant. And it doesn't need to be in order to have a peaceful mind. Because external things aren't as important as we make them.
We create our own suffering.
That's the way we, so it isn't that we don't experience suffering without any help. We get hit by a car, it hurts, but we add suffering to all of our experiences. So you have an unpleasant thing happening, we can make it worse. Or we can have equanimity and not react to it. Just deal with it. Just handle it. Know it will pass. Know that it's empty. And it's not even a judgment of us. Sometimes I feel like, in the early days, I felt like I am a walking billboard for past non-virtue. It's like, because if bad things happen, that's what that means. But we can't go there because we all have all of it. We've had since beginningless time. If you think you've never been part of the history that was murderous or, greedy, think again. Yeah.
The thing they tell dog owners,
Mm-hmm.
that if you're gonna correct the dog, you gotta do it right after
the action. Yeah.
And it's kind of like we're dogs where we've done so many things wrong and
Yeah.
like and then we get like, well, punished or we pay it,
The effect arises.
Yeah, we pay a consequence and like, it's like, where did that come from?
Yeah. And then of course karma teaches where it comes from. You know.
The thing about it though is to recognize that it came from something.
It's not
and-
without a cause.
Right, and that it's the way we live now that will help.
The future.
Yeah.
Yeah. And understanding there aren't sources of our suffering other than our own past actions. Things are conditions, because you have to meet the conditions as well. You know, you have to have created the cause to have some, but you also have to meet the conditions. The two have to go together. And it's not just two. The myriad of things have to come together. And so you can, you know, it's not linear. It's not like, oh, the next life will have that. You know, it's not like that. Depends on what ripens for you in the next life.
You're saying that you may engage in an act that's a cause for something, but you're not going to experience
The
whatever
result
that
in this
is
life.
until, so it's like the condition for that to happen.
Right. And that can be eons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is why we want to get out.
That's what sense of humor is.
Yes. Yes. So because it's not about what's ripening, it's how we respond to what's ripening that matters. You know, and I mean, and that's hard to get. You know, we think it's so, you know, that's not it. We need to, you know, we want to work with our minds. So how we respond to whatever is happening is with wisdom and compassion and with wanting to benefit others, not just be self-cherishing. I encourage you to, if you're interested in emptiness at all, to read that chapter and really reflect on it. You know, and then the last chapter Lama Yeshe wrote, you know, is just a sort of like how you can just, you know, you can constantly be turning ordinary actions into virtuous actions by virtue of the state of mind you're using. You know, if you can really understand that whatever work you're doing isn't isolated, you're one of billions of beings that, and we depend on each other, you know. So even things like having a clean car, never wash my car. But what does that mean? That means all the oil grime that builds up on my car every time it rains, it's washing out into some water system thingy, drainage thing, and it's not good for the environment. That's entirely my fault. You know, I'm not alone. But so even doing things like that, taking care of your car, making sure that you're not just putting chemicals on your grass so you have green grass, but you're trying to think, how can I make my landscaping good for the environment? How can I, you know, there are all sorts of ways in which what we do matters. In fact, everything we do matters. You know, it's just a matter of degree. And some things we do harm. And again, it's a matter of degree. And we want it, and we have an opportunity to correct those things when we kind of look, oh, maybe there's a better way to do this. You know, because, you know, the world's counting on us. Yep.
So again, from self-revelation, as I've gotten older, and I feel like I've moved to another stage of getting older, I want to simplify things. I find I have this real drive to simplify things, to give things away, to make it more simple. And just from tonight's talk, I'm wondering if that has something to do with living cleanly and creating less.
Well, attachment, certainly.
Yeah.
You know,
Huh.
yeah. I mean, it's like, and not accumulating more. As far as clean living, that's probably the best thing. It's just not accumulating more. You know, and giving things to somebody who actually uses something, not having it land in a landfill, you know, all those things. But there are all sorts of things. But it's just, But simplifying our lives, in other words, by having less belongings, less clutter, all that helps us work with our minds, and it depends. It doesn't work for everybody, but I mean, it's this, and also doing less, thinking more, doing less, reflecting more, recognizing that the richness of life is dependent on your mind. Otherwise, you miss it. So, okay, enough of me. So, now, at the end of an action, we try to set a motivation at the beginning. At the end, we want to dedicate any positive karmic seeds, the future results of those things, to ripen for others. And so there are two things that dedications can do, like if you remember emptiness while you're dedicating, that all these positive things, anything is all empty of inherent existence, that protects it from anger and things destroying it. If you dedicate it to the great ocean of enlightenment, it won't exhaust until everybody's enlightened. So these things, now granted, this is all dependent on how powerful our mind is. So our little prayers right now might not have a whole lot of power, okay? But the more and more we strengthen our good qualities, the more powerful our good qualities are. And so even our dedications become more powerful. And, and this is why people write to His Holiness, please pray for him, because his mind's more powerful than mine. So his prayer, but actually the strongest, our karmic relationships, our prayers for people are the strongest for people we know and that we have a karmic relationship with, and if His Holiness doesn't know them, it might not be as powerful as our own. So it's all relative. Okay. So we want to think about that, and about that. And the good news is too, that if we also were not just rejoicing about our own efforts during this time, we can rejoice in, anything positive we've ever done, anything positive that was going on while we were doing this, that we know is happening somewhere in the world, and there's not just one thing, there's many. And we can rejoice in all the activities of enlightened beings, you get some merit from even thinking about those things, because it's directing your mind in the way you want it to go. We want our minds to do positive things. We want to be like those who can do it all the time. All of that stuff. Just appreciating that it's happening is strengthening that connection to recognizing the wisdom of positive actions. And so that helps us get closer and a more powerful mind, more merit. So we'll read these. So don't forget to rejoice, assume you've made some positive seeds for your mind's dream. And that's what merits are. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. So these first two verses, Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, make sure you always say these two at the minimum. Okay. So that wish to become enlightened for the benefit of others, and that wish that wherever the mind of bodhicitta, which is the mind that wishes to become enlightened for the benefit of others, keeps growing. Wherever it is, let it get stronger. Wherever it's not, let it start to grow. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche encouraged us all to do those all the time, every time. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samanta Bhadra too realize things as they are, I too dedicate all these merits in the best way that I may follow their perfect example. This is about wisdom. This is about adding that touch of realize things as they are. That's recognizing emptiness of inherent existence of all things. And that's protecting the prayers. I dedicate all these roots of virtue, but the dedication praises the best by the victorious ones thus gone of the 3 times, so I might perform good works. I dedicate whatever virtues I have ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of perfect, pure Losang to shine forever. Losang is Lama Tsongkhapa, who's the main teacher in this tradition. Nope. So for His Holiness's long life, in the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And then for the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that's never discouraged. Incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the 3 jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. So you can turn off the record, Jack. Okay, so thank you very much. We're having